Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, or if it is your first time, welcome to the channel. Today, we're gonna talk about the top 4 mistakes that people make when they buy a house here in Colorado Springs. All right, so like I said, today we're gonna talk about the top mistakes that we see people make whenever they look to purchase a home, or if they do purchase a home here in the Colorado Springs area. Before we get into that, I wanna tell everybody, remember, our channel is all about the Colorado Springs area. We wanna make sure that we're providing all the information to you if you're thinking about a move here, or maybe you're already in the area and thinking about a little bit of a transition. So we try to cover Colorado Springs, where to eat, work, live, play. We definitely do highlight a lot of real estate stuff because that is what we do. We are a real estate sales team. We help people day in and day out that are moving into the area find a great place for themselves and or their families to live. So if you have any questions about the real estate specific stuff, please reach out anytime as well. We just want to make sure you know everything about Colorado Springs so you're confident if you make a decision to come to our awesome area. So call, text, email, whatever is easiest for you. We just want to make sure you have all the information possible whenever you make your decision. All right, so let's get into it. Top mistakes that we see people make whenever they're purchasing a home here in Colorado. And honestly, I think a lot of these you could probably say are, it's not just specific to Colorado Springs. Some of them might be a little bit more, but a lot of these are just kind of trends that we see in our business. But I think some of them, I'll get to them here in a second, but I think some of them do have more to do, or they're kind of highlighted because of the area that they're buying in. So let's just get into them. So number one, not researching areas. And I do believe it's not specific to Colorado Springs, but Colorado Springs makes this problem a little bit worse. And it's because Colorado Springs has so many areas within it. It's obviously we're not as big as Denver, so we don't have as many kind of municipalities that are kind of in the Denver metro area, right? But we do have downtown Colorado Springs. We have the Powers Boulevard, which is the eastern part of Colorado Springs. Village 7, kind of a little bit older area in the middle of town, north side of town, Briargate, Old Colorado City, Black Forest, Fountain, there's Falcon, there's all these different areas. And I think whenever people, they get excited about moving to Colorado Springs, like a lot of folks do, and they come here and they don't spend the time needed twofold. They don't research enough ahead of time and really make sure that they've done their due diligence and understand the area as much as they can. And then when they get here, they don't spend enough time familiarizing themselves with the area. That's one thing we do that we're really adamant about with our clients is we do an area familiarization is what we call it. And basically it's like a day of just driving around in the car. Unless somebody already knows the area because they've been here before, maybe lived here before and they know where they want to live, we really try to get people to just explore the town, learn as much as you can about it, learn what the things are to do in different parts of town so you can really just know those areas. And is it going to be a 100% solution that you're comfortable with? Maybe not. We have a lot of folks that decide, you know what? I'm going to pump the brakes on purchasing. I want to rent for, 6 months maybe to try to get to know the city a little bit more, just to be sure I'm super confident with where I own a house at. And that's awesome. We fully support that. Some people are say, hey, you know what? I've been doing it a couple of days. I know this is the area I want to live in. So just not researching areas enough ahead of time and making sure that it has, the commute times are good, that the amenities are what you need. Whatever's important to you, that area really, really fits you. So number one, I would say is not researching areas enough. And because the way Colorado Springs is laid out, it's just a lot of different areas that offer different things, kind of makes that problem a little bit worse, I think, honestly. The second one would be not planning for the future. And this is not necessarily, buying the biggest house that you possibly can, because that's not what your future holds, is a bigger family. But thinking about, I work in Colorado Springs now. Is there potential that my job might transition to Denver, or that for promotion I might have to go to Denver? So I'm making a commute. Did I think about that? And now I bought a place on the north side of town versus on the south side of town or downtown because I thought it was trendy and cool, but now my drive time isn't as good. So just really thinking about the future of what your future plans are going to be, and then also just kind of the future of the city and understanding what that development is going to look like, what's going to be new to some certain areas. And really just trying to kind of forecast. None of us can do this perfectly, of course, right? But just really trying to forecast of what the future holds. And whenever you're looking for a house to purchase, just really kind of dial it in and say, hey, it's a good fit for right now. And also it's going to be a good fit for the foreseeable future. not many of us buy our forever homes, early on in life. So you're probably going to move. But I think that's something that we see a lot of is, people buy a home, and a lot of times it comes down to that commute, honestly, is they buy a home, it's a great fit, it's close to work, but then they really didn't think through of, man, in a year, I'm going to take a promotion or I'm going to move jobs to this area. So just really thinking through what the future is going to hold and trying to find a home that fits the bill now for you, and then also in the future as well, at least in the near medium term future. The third one, I would say, man, I hate it whenever we see this, but we do see it, is exceeding your budget. We're very, very adamant about it. And I think, smart, savvy financial people agree with this, is that stay within your budget, right? Like set your monthly budget, figure out what you're comfortable with, and stay within that budget. We see some people, and I know, again, this is a Colorado Springs-ism to some degree, is that prices have just went up pretty fast here lately over the last couple of years. So as people have moved to town, they get a little anxious about, man, like I really had in my mind this type of house or this area that I was going to be in, but now my budget doesn't really quite support that. So instead of just saying, you know what, I'm going to have to make some sacrifices to stay within my budget, they'll overextend themselves a little bit. It's always our counsel to stay within your budget no matter what it is. If it means that you need to rent because you can't afford to buy right now, that's an option. If it means you don't get to be quite in the exact area or quite the exact size of house that you wanted, that's okay. Get into a house that's within your budget, and then over time, save up more, let that house appreciate a little bit so you have some more cash to buy another home if you want to. But we don't see it that often. I think a lot of it's because we counsel people so much about not exceeding their budget, but we do see it. And then we'll have clients that come to us to help sell a house. And as we kind of learn their story, they kind of say, yeah, man, I overshot my budget a little bit. Now I'm house poor. Everybody's heard that term, right? Where you can't afford to go to the movies because you spent too much on your house. So we don't want anybody to be like that. And unfortunately, it is something that we see. So that's definitely one of the biggest mistakes you can make when purchasing, not just here in Colorado Springs, but that's definitely overall. And then the fourth one, we're just going to talk about four of them. There's certainly more, but the fourth one, this is probably it could be the number one thing, but it's getting too emotional about things. Purchasing a home is a huge, huge investment. It's usually the most expensive purchase that we make in our lifetimes. So buying a house does truly become this extremely emotional thing, especially if there's more than one decision maker involved in the process. So, we all say, kind of like what I talked about before, we've got in our mind, like what our house is going to look like, and what area it's going to be at, and where our kiddos are going to go to school. And we can picture them walking down the sidewalk in their backpacks, right, to the nice school. So we all have this picture in our mind, and sometimes it becomes very, very difficult if that isn't quite coming to fruition, or we realize it's not quite reality. We can really get kind of too emotional about the home purchasing process. And a lot of times that too emotional leads to bad decisions. Kind of going back to the previous one of extending your budget, that's definitely one. Some people will just kind of say, my gosh, I can't deal with this. I'm not moving there, or I'm not going to take that job there because I can't find a house and I'm just too stressed by it. So just overall, it's an emotional process buying a home, no doubt about that whatsoever. But some folks just tend to get a little bit too emotional about it. It's also kind of a business decision at the end of the day, right? So don't become too emotional about it. Try to look at things kind of factually, weigh that emotion in there a little bit, but not too much. So to kind of recap a little bit of the top four things that we see people make a mistake whenever they're buying a home is not researching enough ahead of time. Colorado Springs, I won't say it's a complicated area, but there are very different areas throughout the city, and just researching those areas ahead of time. And then whenever you get here physically, taking the time to spend a day or two driving around and getting to know the city. Super important, and a lot of people don't do that. The second thing is not planning for the future enough. And again, that doesn't mean buying a huge house. That could just mean, hey, I might take a job somewhere else and I don't want to have to commute that far. So let me find something in the middle. So really trying to plan out what the next 2 to 5 years looks like, and then trying to find a house that fits all the needs you're going to have now and in the near medium term future. The next one, exceeding budget. Like I said, man, we hate it when we see people do it, but we do see it. And then, like I also mentioned, we usually have to help people, kind of get out of that situation if they've gotten themselves into a bad situation by selling the house. So just, come up with that monthly budget, sit down and figure out what number you're truly comfortable with, and then stay within that budget. And then, like I said, if it just doesn't make sense to buy right at that point in time, then maybe you rent for a little bit. I will say also rental prices in the Colorado Springs area are pretty darn high right now. And typically, if you can qualify, you can actually purchase and have kind of a lower overall monthly payment, and you're locked into that payment. but just don't exceed your budget. Just understand what reality is versus what we all ultimately want. Just understand what that reality is and stay within that. That's super important. And then the last thing is just becoming too emotional about it. Like I said, the home buying purchase is very emotional, but if you can just try to kind of, calm that down a little bit, look at it factually, know that you've done your research, you've planned for the future, and you've said you're not going to exceed your budget, you kind of know where your parameters are, and try to kind of, like I said, just hold back some of those emotions and look at it a little bit of a business decision. Of course, we should all be excited about purchasing a home. It's a great, exciting time. But hold back on those emotions so that you don't make a bad decision. That's probably one of the number one things. Don't get too emotional. So those are just 4. Obviously, there's other mistakes that we see people make. We try to counsel them away from them. But these are just 4 that we see pretty commonly. Again, we try to counsel folks away from them. But at the end of the day, we're going to support our clients. We're going to give them the best counsel we can, but ultimately their decision at the end of the day, right? So if you're headed to Colorado Springs, you're thinking about purchasing here, definitely reach out, talk to us, call, text, email, whatever is easiest for you. We can talk through these common mistakes. We can talk about some other ones as well, just to make sure that you don't make those mistakes if you decide to purchase here. So if you're headed this direction, or even if you're just thinking about maybe coming to Colorado Springs, reach out anytime. Like I said, we just want to make sure you get all the information ahead of time so you can make the best decision, whether you come to Colorado Springs or not. And then if you do decide to come to Colorado Springs, we'd love to help you out with your housing needs. Everybody's got to have a place to live, right? So whatever we can do to help out, that's what we're here for. We'll talk soon.